Welcome to another episode of the Loadout Music Podcast, featuring in-depth interviews with a wide range of music personalities, from rock and roll Hall of Famers to Grammy winners and today's rising stars. Recorded from the Old Rock House in St. Louis, Missouri, here's your host, Aaron Perlott.
Welcome back to the Loadout Music Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Aaron Perlott. Today, we welcome in Grammy-nominated folk rock singer-songwriter Shawn Mullins, who is revisiting his celebrated first album, Soul's Core, by recording two new versions of it dubbed Soul's Core Revival. This isn't a remix or a remaster of the original, but rather brand new recordings with new arrangements of the songs. He also has a terrific live album out live at the print shop. Shawn, thanks so much for joining us today. It's a real pleasure to have you on the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
You know, it's interesting. You share something with my nephew in that both of you, it's not often I meet people that also went to North Georgia on an ROTC scholarship, but you and my nephew both share that distinction. So I know when you went there, it had a much longer name, but it was like North Georgia Academy for Pants and Hats and what have you. But
That's right.
Yeah. But when I was, kind of looking at your background, I saw that, I'm like, my nephew, I think it's the same school. Same.
Yeah.
Place. Now he's training to be a ranger. So who knows?
Yeah, and that's kind of where I started playing live. Getting and trying to, earn a little money playing music. Yeah.
When did you? Right. I know you grew up in Atlanta, and Atlanta has such a rich and truly diverse music scene there, from southern rock to country to an amazing rap scene. When did you first kind of get into music and think this is something I'd like to be a part of, or at least do to some degree?
I mean, I don't really remember. I know this is a little bit of a answer that you hear a lot probably, but I didn't really want to do anything else from the time I can remember. To do something where I can be musically creative in some way, or sing or play. I wanted to, I started off with drums, but I didn't, I wasn't really, I was really little, like toddler age. So I was just banging on them, but I would try to play with this Ike and Tina Turner record that we had. And it was hilarious that, I can remember knowing that it wasn't good what I was doing. But yeah, I mean, from the get-go, because my mom's mom, my grandmother on my mom's side, would take me to these, during the summer, they had Theater of the Stars, and at the old Civic Center in Atlanta. And so every summer we would go to, all the shows. She would take, or we would trade off with the different, my brother and my sister, but I would get to go to several that summer. And it was so cool, man. So the kind of old school Broadway, my grandfather, her husband, was a big band musician, and they met at a ballroom. And I believe the story is that it was the Fox Theater Egyptian Ballroom in Atlanta, because he did play there quite a bit for decades. So he played upright bass and bass horns, and so music was kind of in the family on that side. And always encouraged, and my brother and sister both played some guitar when they were in their teens, and I was coming up. I was around 11 when I showed it enough interest that my brother showed me how to play some songs, and so sorry about that incoming call. So yeah, the music thing was, my mom was musical. She could sing and play piano, and my dad even could sing. He just wasn't, if he had a few drinks, he would sing something in a big bass voice. It was hilarious, but it was good.
Yeah. At what point did you say to yourself, this might be something, that I can actually do to support myself?
While I was at North Georgia, there was the only bar there at the time was called Beauregard's, or Bo's. Everyone shortened it to Bo's, but it was really called Beauregard's Bar and Grill. And it was a serious honky tonk. It was like, you wish there was chicken wire around the stage, but there wasn't. And so anyway, can you still see me okay?
Oh yeah, it's all good.
Sorry, I'm trying to get rid of this call. But Beauregard's was the place, and I had a cover band that I joined in with. These guys were really good players, and we played a lot of the kind of 80s rock, not like like hair metal, but more of like college rock stuff, like the Bodines and the Smithereens and the Romantics and the REM and that kind of early college rock thing. And man, we would pack that club whenever we played. We got to where it was, we'd each walk out of there with a few $100s at the end of the night. And that's when I knew, because I called my dad and said, I'm going to start just doing this on the weekends when I'm free to do it. And you don't need to send any more money from home, because they would try to, put a little bit in the bank account. And no, it was really cool. I mean, and then there were times, of course, after that it got a lot harder, once I got out and of the reserves, the training I was doing in the Army, and then eventually went into the reserves. That's when stuff starts getting tough, because you got to figure it out. Okay, I gotta get an apartment, in Decatur, which is where I wanted to be, because I wanted to be near Trackside Tavern. So I needed to be somewhere near there, and good 9, 8 records total from the time I was at North Georgia. I put out my first one, and first 2 was while I was at North Georgia. So they were only on cassette. So, but they were, they were a record. It was a, it was eight total. Yeah. Later that things finally blew up overnight for me.
Yeah. I mean, and that was Soul's Core, which, it did blow up, and, with the songs Lullaby and Shimmer and Gulf of Mexico and, Twin Rock, Oregon. And all of a sudden you were kind of thrust into this thing where you were being played on radio. And that was when, radio actually was radio still at the very I was kind of like the tail end of the radio of, what I think people that are our age might remember as radio. But that must have been like, holy shit, what the hell is happening here for me? I mean, I can't imagine being so, thrust into that kind of situation.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy when I look back on it. I was in survival mode, just kind of like, I mean, it was wonderful, there was all this great stuff happening, but there were a lot of unknowns, and there was a lot of, for some people, you can't even believe that it's happening, because it's been so long that you've been doing this other thing. This thing where you're playing either for tips or for $100 a night, maybe 200. When I would get to open for Indigo Girls, they were friends, and they would sometimes give me a few nights, and it was like $500 a night, and that was crazy good, in the mid 90s. Plus, I'd sell a bunch of CDs after the show. But yeah, I mean, it was crazy once that blew up, because I didn't even have time to think a whole lot about it, because I started, the workload started really getting crazy. I had never worked that hard where Um, you know, you get into town in the middle of the night, check into the hotel, you know, and then you're up at 6 to get to the radio station by, you know, 7:38, the first radio station. Because back then there would be sometimes three top 40 type stations, or there would be a AAA, a modern rock, and a top 40. You know, there were times when I was doing all three of those, because Columbia they didn't want to just do the top 40 when they wanted to continue to work those other two things too. It was really fun. It was a very cool thing to watch, a hit being made by all those working parts. I mean, there was some hardworking people. But yeah, I mean, it'd be at least one interview in the morning on the radio or TV, and then you know, several more. There were some times when you'd just go into a little recording studio and put on headphones and go one after the next, doing radio interviews for like the whole day. It was crazy.
Well,
I didn't enjoy,
you
know, I didn't really enjoy that very much. But it was part of what made it happen and made it successful, is to being that available, you know. And
yeah, Lullaby was nominated for a Grammy, correct?
Yeah,
Lullaby was, but then you also had the song Shimmer ended up on Dawson's Creek and was also used by Australia as part of its promotional campaign for the Sydney Summer Olympics. I mean, you must have been like, I would have been like, holy shit, what the hell? I mean, what's going on here? That's a lot to digest at such a young age.
Well, and I felt, you're right, that I was 29 or whenever when all that was happening. So I didn't feel that young, but because I remember I had a lot of back issues, you know, and that's weird because I don't have them anymore. But in my 20s, I had these weird lower back problems, you know. But anyway, I remember made me feel old when I would, you know, when we went to this Dawson's Creek thing. So it was like these fans get to win a show where the Dawson's Creek cast is going to be there, and then me and Paula Cole, you know, are going to play, and because she had maybe I think it was the theme song to Dawson's Creek, from what I remember. So I remember meeting I call them kids because they were like kids to me.
Yeah.
And they were so nice. Katie Holmes, wow, you know, just what a cool young woman she was. Very, very mature, but just childlike and happy and sweet, you know. And this was, and all of them were like that. They were all very cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, little things like that, you know, that happened, and going to the American Music Awards and getting to play the song, and also getting to, you know, what do you call it? You know, announce one of the awards.
Yeah.
You know, all that. I got to do a lot of that kind of stuff, you know, a lot of late night TV or morning TV that was national. And so, and it happened, you know, it happened fast, like within 4 or 5 months. It was like, so, and then it was just time to get on the road and work, you know. And so we worked really hard, you know, and did a big summer tour with Hootie and the Blowfish, and did a tour with Chris Isaak, and you know, played all kinds of festivals, went all over the world. And I remember the biggest festival was like 200,000 or 300,000 people in Europe, you know. It was in Germany maybe, or might have been Pink Pop in Holland, but it was one of those. It was like almost like a Woodstock, where it was just this sea of people as far as you could see.
Yeah.
And that was kind of scary.
Yeah, I imagine. And so in 2006, you put out the ninth Ward Pickin Parlor, and that had Beautiful Wreck on it. And that was another, pretty sizable hit for you. I mean, and I was always curious about Beautiful Wreck because I know, I believe when I saw you play, you talked a little bit about your sobriety. Were you talking about yourself in that song? Because you talked about people at the end of the bar, and sitting in the car passed out. I didn't know if you were talking about yourself or you were talking about a friend that you were caring about.
Yeah. The song, I do put myself in a lot of songs.
Yeah.
And not even on purpose. It just, once I finish them and I read them back as a little lyric, I discover that there's this part of me in this, and in a lot of the songs, right? But in that one, not really, because it was really started, Glenn Phillips from Toad the Wet Sprocket really had some of the first lines, and he had the Beautiful Wreck, those two words together. And we had written Pete Droge. It was the beginning of what became the Thorns later, earlier than what you're talking about, but it was in 2001, I think, was when we started getting together, maybe 2002. But Glenn Phillips was one of the first people involved in that group of writers to come together and come up with some stuff. And that was one of the songs, but it was a whole nother song, like completely different, and like different chorus, different lyrics throughout. And it got tossed. We never really liked it, and we tossed the song. But I ended up finding the lyric in a big box of lyrics that I keep. You probably do the same thing where you just you try to hold on to things like that are written on napkins or.
I do it on my phone now. I'll just like write down lyrics, and then ultimately, they end up on my computer somewhere among another 100 songs here and there.
Yeah. And so I found a piece of notebook paper with Glenn's handwriting. It wasn't my handwriting, and when I read it, I remembered that Glenn had been the one that was penning. And I lost count of the times I've given up on you, but you make such a beautiful wreck, you do. Yeah. I'm like, man, that's a whole damn song right there. That's like what, because after that, it just went downhill. And I remember calling him and just saying, do you mind if I kind of resurrect this? I think I've got something for a chorus on this, and I can just write something, but it's based on what you started writing, And he was like, yeah. So, and then it kind of fell out of the sky, the rest of it, the chorus. And, but yeah, and then Stephen King ended up writing in Newsweek, of all things, that song was one of his top 10 desert island songs. And, which I was so proud of. I just thought that was so cool that someone like Stephen King, I'm a fan for sure, and that he recognized, and he talks about what it's about, which I didn't even really. I don't know if I know what it's about, but if someone's getting something from it, and it's about whatever it is to them, then you've done your job. So
yeah, I would imagine. Songwriters tend to be pretty prolific, and they write, as you were saying before, and you put it in a box. But at the same time, you haven't produced this ridiculous, over the last 20 years, this ridiculous number of records. So do you tend to be extremely choosy in what you ultimately decide this is a song that I want to produce?
Yeah, but if I ever have to listen back to my records, I discover that I still didn't go far enough.
Yeah.
That that a couple of the songs that make the record may have not, I should have done it. Sometimes I feel that way. So I don't tend to listen to my records after they're made, really, because, you you always want something different once you, but a lot of times they're really good. Like the My Stupid Heart record, the last one I did before this Soul's Core revival. That one I'm really proud of. There's, it's really well produced, and Laurie White, who passed away actually a few years ago, but she produced that, and she did such a great job. But yeah, I mean, the Beautiful Wreck ended up going to number one on the Americana charts, which I'd never been on before, which I was very proud of. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. And then, you came back to, I don't want to say your TV roots, but the song, on the Honeydew record, you ended up with another song on another TV show. Because I believe All in My Head ended up being on the show Scrubs, right?
Yeah, but it's actually a totally different version of the song. It's like really fast.
Yeah.
And Jerry, who drums with me and co-produces stuff with me, great engineer, Jerry Hansen. I just saw him yesterday. But we wrote that together, and it was fast. And what the assignment was to try to write a theme song to this new TV show called Scrubs. So that was what we were trying to do. And it was much more up tempo and like higher key, and then that was years before Honeydew came out. Yeah. I just decided to kind of go, man, I remember All in My Head. I wonder if we could swing it and kind of like a slower mid-tempo swing. And we tried it that way too. But yeah, the Scrubs thing, we made just a quick demo. It was like me and Jerry, and I think I played bass on it too. And sent that, and they loved it. And then they ended up putting that on their soundtrack for the show Scrubs, and it was in the TV show too. But what helped was it being on the actual soundtrack. That helped a lot too.
Yeah. I also found it really interesting. I was listening to the Light You Up record that you put out in 2010, and that was an extremely diverse record in that you had the title track, which was kind of soulful and poppy and even had some hip hop vibes on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had California, that was really kind of a rock song. And then The Ghost of Johnny Cash was more of like a country or folk song. It was, you had the dichotomy of music on that record was really fascinating to me.
I don't know I appreciate, I don't know if it's a compliment or not. So, but
let's say it is.
And I wouldn't blame you if it's not, because
no, I thought it was interesting. It's hard to do. I think it's like Ben Harper had a record about 15 years ago that honestly had 7 different genres of music in this record. And I'm always amazed when an artist has the ability to do that they can, you're not so dialed in on one genre, but you're able to kind of stretch out your musicality. I think it's an incredibly hard thing to do.
Well, that's cool. For me, it's simple. It's like, I love so many different types of music, way more than I've ever explored, like personally, like tried to play or sing or write. Because there's a lot of stuff that I love, like 1960s Brazilian music. I just love it, and love to listen to it. And I love old jazz, and I love really good Bob Marley. I'm picky about my reggae, but I love Bob Marley a lot. So a lot of different stuff, and I love good old school hip hop and rap, and but it's not one of the main things that I, it was much more Prince, like as a kid getting into, like a teenager, I got into, kind of the everything you would think of, like on the radio that was out. I liked it, I really loved Prince. I could tell this guy's like something special, I just really got into everything he did. And But yeah, eventually it became for me more acoustic. And I think it's because when I went off to college, you couldn't bring an electric guitar, I don't think. And so I brought my acoustic guitar, and that's when I really, probably started writing songs
Yeah.
more. I'd written a few, but I started writing more up there.
Earlier you mentioned My Stupid Heart, and I found that to be amongst your records a very probably the darkest album lyrically, in that, one, the title track, Ferguson, the pre-apocalyptic blues. It seemed like you were in kind of a different place writing that album. Maybe again, from what you've been telling me, a lot of these things end up in a place where you didn't necessarily mean them to be. But were you not in a great place when you were writing for that, or would it just happen to be a collection of songs that maybe a few of them were a little darker here and there?
I think I go in and out of being in a dark place. But I think for me, I don't remember writing a lot of that stuff except for the co-writes, like with Chuck. I remember those. There was, and Max. We wrote stuff together on that too, Max Gomez. I don't know. I think it was more because of Laurie's production and because of Tom Bukovac on guitar, on electric guitar. He had a lot to do with and the late great Michael Rhodes on bass. There were certain musicianship qualities that were on that record that had never been on any of my records. Just kind of a different level or a different universe of musicians, and it was all done really. The whole record was done in 3 days, and so it was just this beautiful thing for me. And I don't know about, like, I guess we picked the songs that went together the best. I don't know if I was in a dark place the whole time I wrote those songs. I think My Stupid Heart, I just broken up with my wife at the time.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that one in particular. But it's also supposed to be kind of tongue in cheek a little bit, poking fun at yourself.
Yeah, I remember a couple years ago when I saw you, and this must have been maybe 4 or 5 years before COVID, and you were playing in St. Louis at the Duck Room. And you talked a little bit about your breaking up with your wife and also alcohol. And so, it sounds like you've kind of gone through some significant changes in your life over the last 10, 15 years. And for an artist, those kind of things leave a mark, oftentimes in a very good way, because they help you find that certain creative notes that maybe you were searching for and couldn't quite put your finger on. But I mean, has the last 10, 15 years been good for you from a creative standpoint because of some of the difficulties you've gone through?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I think tough things in life, help artists a lot of times, and as weird as that is, and as, kind of pathetic as that is, I think that it does, if you allow it, because there have been times that I can be so down where I can't even, do that. But, I do want to just make a quick correction. I never had an alcohol issue. I was kind of a huge pothead for many years.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, but same thing really. It's trying to escape from something.
Right on. Okay.
Yeah.
I know that, I am I haven't I quit drinking 4.5 years ago, and it's for me personally, it's given me a kind of a clarity of mind that I did not have before, and it's allowed me to kind of look pretty deep into my soul, at things that I probably wasn't willing to look at before. And maybe you would use the term sobriety, so I presumed it was alcohol.
Yeah, I think I did use sobriety. Probably that's what I usually do. And
Yeah.
you know, not, and you know, once in a while I'll be more specific on stage about, I'll tell a weed story, you know, I'll tell a funny story that happened, you know, years ago or whatever, because there's a bunch of them.
Yeah. I have some
Yeah.
unfortunate stories of me still drinking, so they're amusing to other people, just not to me or my wife, but she likes to tell them anyhow. So
Yeah. Alcohol's a different thing. I mean, it's not that pot's, you know, I'm not saying pot's better, but it probably might be. But I think, you know, for me, I just had this addiction thing in my family. It just runs on both sides of the family. You know, I've got it in my genes. And so kind of anything that I really like a lot, and I just want to do all, whatever it is. And so, you know, that takes some discipline over the years to kind of figure that out, you know, and kind of get it right, and to where you can live normally.
yeah, no, I'm very similar, whether it's food or alcohol. I'm either all in or not.
Yeah.
But I have a very different relationship with weed, in that you know, I can have some, but not feel the necessity to have it again for another month and be fine, and not overdo it. So it's a much different relationship with alcohol for me, and hence no drinking anymore. So, Shawn, talk about the new project, revisiting Soul's Core, and why you've decided to do that.
Well, it was, you know, a few years ago when we actually recorded it, and it's really for the, you know, the 20-year anniversary.
Yeah.
Of when the record first came out. And Glenn Matullo, who engineered that, you know, he was one of the main engineers on that first Soul's Core. He said, he just like in passing one time said, "Hey man, you ought to do a 20-year anniversary release, and re-release the record, the same one, like a lot of people do, where, you know," I'm like, man, I don't want to have to deal with Sony. Like, I can't even to buy, you know, in order to buy vinyl from them, it was costing me like $11 a copy for CDs, and like 25 for vinyl. And so there was no way to make money. I couldn't sell, you know, I was like, why would I want to do that? But then I thought, wait a minute, some people are actually re-recording their projects. And I said, this could be a good in-between album for me while I'm working on whatever's coming next, while I write. I've been writing slower in the last 5-6 years.
Yep.
But recently it's picked back up again, which is great. Makes me have some hope and faith, because for a few years I just haven't written very much. And you know, but I know songwriters that are great songwriters, fantastic ones, that might only write 10 songs in a year, but they're damn good songs, you know. They just work on them really hard. And there's nothing wrong with that way to do it. I'm definitely not a 3-song a day guy. You know, I don't know how to do that. I did it for a couple of trips to Nashville, where I'd go up there and do those meeting, you know, where you meet a guy in a publishing house somewhere, and you sit there, you got maybe 2 or 3 hours to try to write a song. I'm like, man, come on. No wonder your country music sucks right now. You know, and for the most part, you know, it's like they're not well written. But it's just cyclical. That's a cyclical thing. You know, I mean, man, you could look at every decade of America, and through, you know, through country or any kind of music for that matter, and there's just like schmaltz. happening for a lot of it, and then you'll get these little you'll get these little happy moments. It's like you got disco, right? But all of a sudden Mother's Finest comes out, with Mickey's Monkey and Baby Love. They're from here. They're like this amazing band. And then you get Ricky Lee Jones and Elvis Costello and happen in the late 70s at the same time that disco's still the thing, really. So and not to like disparage all disco, but you know what I'm saying, right? When the first Ricky Lee Jones record came out, it was like huge for me. I was 11 years old and my brother had gotten the album and I just played that thing over and over again. I thought it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard, and I still really think so much of her, and her artistic process is so real and natural and beautiful. And she's able to give everything right there on stage. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, she's a pretty unique talent. So what's next, man? You're on the road.
Yeah, off and on. Yeah, I don't do real long trips. I got a 13-year-old son, and he does travel baseball, so there's all that going on too. And I try to be a good dad, and I don't want to be, we did a 3-week run with Larry Campbell and Teresa Williams back in March, and I felt like that was just a little bit too long for right now. I kind of like going out for a few days and coming back home and getting to be a dad again. So
yeah, it seems like I was looking at your schedule. It seems like you're doing some kind of in the Midwest, and then you're going to be on the West Coast as well. But they do seem like they're spaced out, so it gives you a chance to go play, get back home, go play, get back home.
Yeah, like in July, we're going to do, Maine, New Hampshire, I think Daryl's house in Pauling, New York. And then you're right, like in the next kind of run of things is like August in Alaska, and then we'll work our way down the West Coast into September. So yeah, I mean, I'm only really playing as much as I have to. I'm lucky, I guess, that doing well enough to not have to be out all the time. I'm grateful for that. Although I love doing it, but like I said, I think, being a dad's the most important thing to me right now. So
Shawn Mullins, it has been a real honor having you on the show. Thank you so much. Best of luck with the new records, enjoying your son at 13 and being on the road sporadically, but been a privilege having you here on the Loadout.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, man. Appreciate it.